Tenknum, Chapter 2. I awoke at precisely 5 a.m. I'm not sure how I developed this ability, but I had absolute power over my ability to sleep. I could decide how long I wanted to sleep, and would awake immediately after that time had passed. It was kind of freaky if you thought about it. A human shouldn't be able to do something like that, yet here I was. Perhaps it developed due to my body being on constant alert for danger. I stood up and stretched. No bath, no toothbrush, no breakfast, no change of clothes, the usual. I walked to the library washroom and looked in the mirror. I had to stand a bit away from the mirror in order to see myself. I was short. 4 feet 7 inches tall, kind of short. A pair of bloodshot green eyes stared back. The eyes of an animal. A long nose occupied the majority of the space below my eyes. It made it look like I had a beak, not very attractive. Followed by a mouth with dried and cracked lips that were forever frozen in a state of grim hunger, a hunger that went past the need for food. I tore my eyes away from my mouth and looked at the dirty skin pulled taut over my skull. I then looked at my jet black hair. How much of my hair being black due to dirt, I didn't know. I turned on the sink, another luxury of the library. The plumbing still worked. I normally don't wash myself. Being washed brought unwanted attention, and someone might want to know where I washed up. That could lead to the discovery of the library. Today I needed to be as clean as possible to look at least a little presentable. Today was the selection for Tenknum. If all went well, I wouldn't be returning to this library for quite some time. It made me a little sad, since this was my home for several years. I swore that if I was chosen and I won, I would buy the property to the library and fix it up. The promise made me feel a little better. I exited the washroom and hid my things on the likely chance that I would return and need them again. I then left through the window and walked out of the alley. I turned north towards the nearest Virtual Haven Industries location and began walking. It was a few-hour trek, but I walked that distance every day in search of food. I walked through alleys and avoided people as much as possible. I never knew who could be a threat. Someone who was hungrier than I could attack me in hope of some food, or some rich man could have his goons beat me for showing my ugly face and disturbing his walk. There were many possibilities. I eventually arrived at the Virtual Haven Industries compound that was located on the edge of Kepler Square. Kepler Square was an upper-class location filled with big companies, fountains, statues of great people, and well-groomed trees and shrubbery. The entire square was filled to the brim with people who came to be chosen for Tenknum. Many police officers stood in and around the crowd to maintain peace and keep the rabble out. I was the definition of rabble, but I easily infiltrated the crowd by simply weaving my way through the crowds of people that were entering the square. Being small was helpful at times. I slowly slid my way through the crowd towards the Virtual Haven building. Mounted in the front of the building was a stage, several dozen cameras, and the largest projected screen I'd ever seen. Projected screens were small devices that would project an image, video, or technological interface into the air. They were portable and convenient. This projected screen filled the air above the stage. I estimated the projection to be hundreds of square meters in area, perhaps even 1,000. Eventually, while weaving through the crowd, I encountered a bush. Perfect. I could hide in it and wait for the festivities to start. It would be a pity if a police officer saw me and shot me with a stun gun before dragging me out of the crowd. An hour of hiding in the bush passed before several men and women walked out onto the stage with an escort of several muscular security officers. The cameras focused on them and broadcasted them onto the screen. A woman walked to the podium on the stage and began to speak.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming out to celebrate the opening of Tenknum. I know everyone is excited for the selection process, but I must warn you, we only have 10 additional rigs for this location. Only 10 of you will be chosen.
That shot a lot of people's hopes and dreams to hell. Many adopted a look of despair. The woman did not wait for a single second to let the hopelessness set in.
Now, without further ado, the opening trailer for Tenknum.
The projected image flipped over an aerial scene of a beautiful city and a castle in the center.
The screen zoomed and soared through the city.
A narrator spoke about the peaceful empire of humans where everyone lived happily. Now that was a load of bullshit. The lead developer specifically stated in an interview that Tenknum practically built itself. They simply created the map, game mechanics, and the races that lived in it. Each living thing inside had its own will and would function as if Tenknum was in reality. If each human functioned exactly how a real person functioned, then that empire was in no way a happy place for everyone. There was certainly poverty and most likely much worse. The narrator continued to talk and the camera zoomed out and panned over the lush forests, oceans, and mountains till it reached a far corner of the globe. At this distant land, the environment turned dark and sinister. The narrator explained that the world would not be peaceful for much longer. A dark evil was emerging. Thousands of years ago, the Great Heatran War against the Dark Lord Heatran. Heatran was so powerful that he united the monsters and creatures of the world to exterminate the humanoid races. The Great Heatran War lasted dozens of years, with millions of casualties before the Dark Lord Heatran was sealed through the combined might of the humanoid races. However, the Dark Lord Heatran was only sealed due to the humanoid races being unable to kill him. Now the Dark Lord Heatran is stirring and attempting to break his seal. Only you can stop Heatran. You are the only hope to save Munatig. The narrator spoke his last words as the trailer came to an end. Everyone shouted out in excitement. It looked like it was so much fun. This would be a pleasant change from their dull lives of peace and prosperity in reality. The previous statement about only 10 rigs being open to the public at this location was long forgotten. The woman returned to the podium.
I'm glad to see everyone as excited as we are. We will now begin the selection process. The selection process will simply be the 10 of us choosing one person from the crowd. We will follow our own criteria and choose whoever we want. There is no limit on who we can choose, and we do not need to state the reason why we chose that person. Some of us might choose quickly or randomly, while others will take a while to think and interview you before making a selection. You will not prevent us from talking to someone. You should remain quiet and allow us to do what we wish. After you are selected, we will take you inside to sign a contract to participate, the woman proclaimed. I froze. Something about the woman's explanation about the whole process felt wrong. The 10 selectors rose and began walking towards the crowd. This game would have millions of participants. The game also only allowed one life. Why only give someone one life in a video game? Based on the trailer, the difficulty was going to be extremely high, and most participants would probably never lay eyes on the Dark Lord Heatran before dying. The game would seem strange. Something was wrong about how they built the game. The money the company was giving out was merely changed to them, but why build a game to be almost impossible? Something itched in the back of my memory, and the puzzle pieces fell into place. Frederick W. Bolton is a lunatic that derives pleasure from causing misery. This game wasn't for the public. It was for him. The whole game would be streamed live to the world. Bolton could watch millions of participants struggling. Bolton managed to pull the strings and pass a law that gave him the ability to kill through a contract the night before the game was launched. Bolton planned to kill everyone who died in the game. It was probably a small sentence written in a long, convoluted contract. No sane person would read hundreds of pages that were mostly involved in the contract to sign up for the game. The participants probably wouldn't even have time to read through the contract before the game would start. During my period of panic, 9 people were selected from the crowd and taken inside of the Virtual Haven Industries' building. A single selector remained, but he was sitting in the middle of the stage scanning the crowd. He made no move to pick up anyone, and no one dared to anger him by moving or breathing too loudly. I bit my lip. I was probably one of the few, if not the only one, who realized the dreadful plan that was behind the game outside of Virtual Haven Industries. I had to decide. Do I attempt to sign my life away with the slim chance I win? Do I continue to starve on the streets while desperately thinking of ways to survive? I calmed myself by breathing deeply. I would rather die trying to get out of the hellhole of a life than starve to death. Time to sign my life away. I crept out of the bush and slowly crawled in between people to get to the front. No one noticed me due to having their eyes glued on the selector. I finally made it to the front of the crowd by the stage. The man was several feet from me. The selector was unlike the others. He wanted someone to impress him. That's why he simply sat, waiting. I needed to get the man's attention. There was one way to do that. I opened my mouth to speak, only to find that I couldn't. I hadn't spoken in years. There was no point to, especially after I grew out of my habit of talking to myself. I cleared my throat. It was like I had turned into a turkey and took flight. Everyone's turned their heads towards me, including the selector. I looked the selector dead in the eye. He was incredibly surprised to see some street urchin in front of him all of a sudden. I spoke in a crackly voice. Does the contract state when you die in the game, the contract you sign is broken, and Virtual Haven Industries has the right to kill you for breaking the contract? Silence followed my question. It was more quiet than a stealthy dead walrus. The selector's eyes widened, and he smiled. He calmly stated, I have been waiting for someone intelligent. I choose that boy. Officers, bring him to me. There was an instant uproar in the crowd. Some were perplexed at what I had proclaimed, while others only cared about the last position being taken. Several grabbed me in an attempt to beat me till I was unable to participate. They couldn't accept that some filthy child would be chosen over them. The other selectors at least chose reasonable people. Young men laden with muscles, stunning women with the latest fashion, martial artists, and more. All were better choices than this boy. I was smashed over the head and my vision blurred. I've been hit harder than that, you jackass. All your money has made you soft. I wouldn't black out to some privileged scum. I struggled free from the hands around me and lashed out, striking with all my might, which was surprisingly large for a starved teenager. My hunger fueled me to fight. It is my strength. Several moments passed, and I was already being overwhelmed. Hunger attacks the masses, does not fend off the masses. However, fully armed security officers equipped with stun batons and stun guns do. Several people shrieked around me and fell to the ground, writhing due to being shot with stun guns. The rest of the crowd backed off, forming a ring around me. In a world of peace, most people have lost their edge for violence, and when faced with it, would turn and run like a pelican being shaved. I spit blood out of my mouth and onto the pavement. One of the sacks of flesh writhing at my feet had a mean right hook. As a favor to him, I kicked him in the head before turning and walking towards the stage. Perhaps my kick would literally knock some sense into him. Ruthless! I like it. You will need that in years to come. It appears I made the right choice. The selector laughed aloud when he saw me kick the man. Many from the crowd looked at the selector in horror when they heard the selector encouraging me. Some also picked up on his remark about how I would need to continue my ruthlessness. Those few were starting to piece together that Tenknum was no game. The man hit me on the back while still laughing. He then steered me into the building. So, how did you figure out that little tidbit about the game? You clearly aren't from some powerful company or family who could have pulled strings to figure it out. I simply put the pieces of information I had in my possession and came up with a prediction that I believed was correct, I replied. Not only did you piece together the information, but you had the guts to call it out and wished to enter this death game regardless of the danger. You are exactly what I want in my contestant, the man proclaimed as we entered the building. You know, we receive a large prize as well if the contestant we choose wins. Not that you care. By the way, what's your name, kid? I'm Alistair Kent. Pleasure to meet you. I don't have a name. I was never given one or bothered with the trifle matter of naming myself. Oh, I know you looked pretty rough, but I didn't expect you were a full-blown street rat. No wonder you were so small. You probably never had a real meal in your life. Know what? After we get this contract signed, I'll treat you to a meal. No complaints here. Based on the way you talk, you seem quite educated. If you put on some decent clothes and had a shower and a hot meal, you could fool everyone with the story of you being from the middle class. I'm pretty lucky. I got access to an old laptop that slipped under the internet billing radar. I learned everything from there. Normally, I wouldn't share this information with anyone out of fear of theft. But I probably wouldn't return home for a few years, if at all. So it doesn't matter. This Alistair guy worked for Virtual Haven Industries. He wouldn't care about my meager possessions. Self-taught. Interesting. Welcome to Virtual Haven's Galler Branch, location number 3. Alistair spoke as the sliding doors opened. A nice draft of heat wafted out of the building. It was autumn, so the air was crisp, and the heat felt wonderful. We stepped inside the pristine building. I wonder how revolted the other staff would be at my appearance. Janitor probably wouldn't be happy with me either due to the dirt that I was tracking in up with my bare feet. What the hell is this disgusting thing? Alistair, you kept bragging about choosing the perfect candidate, and you brought some dirt stain? A woman called out. It was the same woman as the one who made the speech. Heather, you underestimate me, and more importantly, him. His intelligence is nothing to scoff at. This boy's a genius. So what if he's a bit dirty? Alistair shot back. How the hell would you know if he's intelligent? He's clearly a street rat. He is guaranteed to not have a single speck of schooling, Heather criticized. My candidate is self-taught and a prodigy when it comes to deduction. He figured out the little secret about this game. Alistair smiled evilly. I could see his eyes as wide as a hippo's mouth when it yawned after taking several pounds of hypnotics. He didn't want to miss a single sliver of her reaction. It was quite the reaction, too. The woman's face shifted from surprise to disbelief to anger. No way in hell the boy figured it out by himself, especially an uneducated street rat, the woman snapped angrily. The term street rat was beginning to grate on my nerves.
I'm not a rodent. That would be shown soon enough. I know I can do better than most of the other candidates. The woman and Alistair argued for a few more minutes before the woman stormed off all shining.
Fine, sabotage your chances, Alistair. See if I care.
What a woman she is. Deep down, she's concerned about me and wanted me to win. Alistair patted me on the shoulder while smirking. Alistair had an interesting relationship with this woman. Is that how you interpret that? I asked. You two seem as close as a sea urchin and a burnt sweet potato. That was an interesting simile, Alistair said while scrunching his face. The fact that he was being sarcastic and slightly weirded out by my simile completely flew over my head. Alistair quickly got over my odd quirk and moved on. Well, come on, boy. We have some papers to sign. Alistair brought me to a side room. It was a simple small room with a table and 2 chairs. The room was best described as sterile. It seemed to not contain a speck of dirt. I changed that. I could see the filth that I was leaving behind on the pristine floor. It made me feel disgusting, like I was a stain on the world. I suppose that's what the room was for, slowly cleaning up the filth of the world, one name at a time. Every signature was potentially one less mouth to feed. No. The age requirement for the game was under 25 years of age. Killing someone at that age would prevent them from having children, effectively cutting off millions of children that would eventually be born. The plan was brilliant. Frederick W. Bolton was a genius. Solve a small chunk of the overpopulation issue in a few short years. Of course, that was assuming every player died, which was unlikely. If Bolton wanted people to continue playing his death game after the original batch, someone would have to win to encourage those who were desperate or crazy enough to play. I would have to say the solution was not necessarily humane, but I could not deny the potential effectiveness. I sat down on the white chair at the white table. Well, the chair and the table were white until I touched them. On the table was a tablet. I looked at the tablet and found the contract on the screen. Located conveniently at the top was an arrow to skip to the bottom of the contract. Alistair took a seat across from me and I looked at him. We have 2 choices, I stated. The first is to simply tell me where the clause stating that I'm signing my life away is. The second would be us sitting here for the next few hours as I slowly read it. Clause 54,724. Alistair laughed. The contract is made so that no one reads it. It would be a waste of your time to read it. It doesn't contain anything important other than the short area that signs your life away. I went to clause 54,724 and read through it. To summarize, it stated that the signer would be obligated to participate in Tenknum. However, if they did not participate or lost the character's life, then the contract would be void. If the contract was void, then the signer's life would be forfeit. It was straightforward and simple, presuming someone could find the small piece of information in a sea of meaningless words. I then scrolled to the bottom of the contract to sign. I then encountered the most awkward scenario and looked at Alistair. What's with the weird face? Alistair asked. Sign so I can tell you a few details before you get cleaned up and fed. Lots to do, little time. The contract requires a signature, I replied. All contracts do. You clearly don't understand, I said while rolling my eyes. I don't have a name. Oh. Well, shit. Parents never gave you a name? No parents. Street rat, remember? Never gave yourself a name? Never needed one till now. Well, now you do, so think of one. Paused in thought. Call me Solomon Errant. Interesting. Solomon as in the prophetic king, while errant, as in straying away from standards or searching for adventure. Sounds like a name out of a fairy tale. What I'm going to be doing sounds like a fairy tale, or rather, a bad sci-fi book. An evil businessman sends a bunch of young, adventure-seeking kids into a video game that will kill them, and then broadcasts it live to the world, I said while signing the contract. The comparison of reality to a bad sci-fi book earned a laugh from Alistair. It felt odd signing the contract. Although I taught myself to read and write, I never wrote my new name before, so it felt unfamiliar. This name didn't feel like my own. I would have to make it my own. Earn the right to have a name that I gave myself. The name carried lofty ambitions. I would have to live up to those ambitions. Well, now that you've signed, we would usually head to the conference where Virtual Haven Industries would be giving out a bit more information about this event. But I think you should wash up and get something to eat instead. I'll fill you in on what the conference says. Now follow me to the showers, Alistair said once I finished signing. I followed him out of the room and down several halls to a series of bathrooms equipped with showers. Go get scrubbed up and I'll get you some clean clothes. Alistair disappeared down the hall. I went into the pristine bathroom. I relieved myself before shedding clothes onto the floor. I climbed into the shower and turned on the hot water. I know how to take a shower due to reading and the internet, but I'd never taken one. The library's hot water had been long broken before I stayed there, so I didn't have the ability to clean myself with hot water. I had to say the hot water felt good on my sore muscles, but my many cuts did not appreciate it. It stung. I got soap out of a dispenser on the wall and spent several minutes cleaning my every crevice. My skin was unbelievably white beneath all the dirt. My limbs looked like fragile porcelain. I got shampoo from a different dispenser and scrubbed my scalp until it hurt. Finally clean. It took 14 years, but it happened. I stepped out of the shower and dripping water over the floor. I took a deep breath and looked in the mirror. Over the sinks, across from the shower, a skeleton stared back. He had pearly white bones, frightening green bloodshot eyes, and a surprisingly long set of jet black hair. If I looked closely, I could see a bit of muscle that hadn't been starved off my bones. I broke away from my frightening image. I picked up a towel and dried myself before dressing in my new clothes that Alistair left on the sink. I put them on to find that they were enormous on me. I was simply too small to fit in most clothes. Thankfully, he had left a belt for me. I put the belt on the smallest notch, which was barely enough to keep my pants up. I rolled up the bottom of my pants to keep them from dragging on the ground. I rolled up the sleeves of my shirt as well, so my hands were exposed to the air. I slipped on the socks and shoes. Despite being large, the clothes were a drastic improvement from the rags I wore before. I looked back at the mirror. I looked like a child who had put on his dad's Virtual Haven Industries uniform, which was an improvement over the wild animal look I had previously wore. As I walked out of the bathroom, I swore I would ask for a pair of scissors or a knife to cut my hair. Alistair was waiting in the hallway, tapping away at something on his latest wrist computer. Wrist computers were essentially a watch, a phone, and a computer, and a few other devices rolled into a convenient package on your wrist. The holographic image was one-sided, so no one could see what you were doing from the other side of the image. Alistair looked up and motioned for me to follow him. He led me down a few corridors while continuing to tap away at his wrist. We arrived at the cafeteria of the building, though it was closer to a 5-star restaurant. Damn, this company was rich. Alistair and I took a seat at the table. Just order whatever you want. You eat, I'll talk. Alistair put it simply. A hologram of the menu appeared out of the table. I clicked several things. This was going to be the best meal of my life. I needed all the calories I could get. Time to get down to business. You already know the biggest secret of Tenknum, so I don't need to beat around the bush much. The virtual reality capsules you will be entering to play connects to your body and brain. Whatever pain or pleasure you experience in the game will be transferred to your body back in the capsule. If you took up smoking in the game, when you return, you will still have that habit and craving. Same goes with drugs, so be careful what you do. Exercise also transfers. When you exercise in the game, the capsule will stimulate your muscles. Pain is slightly different. Your brain will feel it, but no injuries will be inflicted upon your body. Lose your arm in game, you can get it healed back with some magic. No need for the capsule to chop off your arm and regrow it again. Also, surviving Tenknum with lasting injuries would be quite anticlimactic. The game also looks into your mind. There's simply no hiding anything from it. No one gets to create their character. The game makes it for you. It takes your current body structure and appearance and places it in game. That is not particularly good news for you. This problem can be overcome with some training. However, this is not the only part of yourself that is transferred. In order to make the game pristine, each person that enters the game already exists in the game. They have a backstory, memories, and skills. All of these things are transferred to you upon entry. This means if your character cherishes an NPC before you take over, you will cherish that NPC. Certainly makes the game more exciting when players fight for their loved ones and not just a prize pool. However, the game won't go too far in making you connected with everyone around you and forcing you to protect them. Just a little bit of emotional trauma. Nothing you adventurous youngsters can't handle. Also, I know what you're thinking. Yes, your personality and memories from before transfer will still exist. The character you take over will have your exact personality. This will make it so the NPCs don't question anything. They will also have their sensors blocked so they cannot sense anything about the game being talked about. I know it's a lot of information, but it's important. Alistair spewed details like an auctioneer on crack. My meal came and I finished a large chunk of it before I was absolutely stuffed. Now, the fun stuff. How to win. Victory is achieved when Heatran's dead. However, the winner of the competition is the person or guild in possession of the most amount of contribution points. Contribution points are earned through doing things that will impact the war against Heatran. This can be changed from killing some of the subordinates to negotiating alliances between humanoid races to unite the entire world against Heatran. Contribution points are also obtained through quests given by NPCs. You can attempt to earn the most amount of contribution points by yourself, or you can create a guild. Guilds combine contribution points in an attempt to win. However, guilds split the prize money evenly. I recommend you joining a guild, or you will be easily surpassed by those who team up. Do you possess a pair of scissors or a knife I can borrow? I asked when Alistair finished his information dump. Really? That's how you're going to react to this information? No amazement or curiosity on how Virtual Haven Industries accomplished this? Alistair almost shouted. Can I get a little emotion out of you? Will I get a pair of scissors if I do? I asked in all seriousness. Alistair grumbled and stood up and walked over to the kitchen and disappeared inside. He returned with a pair of scissors and placed them on the table before me. He casually glanced at his watch while I grabbed the pair of scissors. Shit! We gotta go, Alistair almost shouted before grabbing my hand and dragging me along. We gotta get you to your capsule in the next 23 minutes. Damn. I guess that ends the information I can give you. Everything else I could have told you is trivial. It's a simple video game. You can figure it out or just ask another player once in game. Now, pick up the pace. It took approximately 15 minutes to reach the warehouse where the capsules were being kept. I did not have a clear idea where the warehouse was due to us taking a hover tram through a long tunnel. Apparently, latecomers would not be able to play and their contract would be terminated along with their life. The warehouse was incredibly huge and the vast majority was an open floor.
Virtual reality capsules filled the floor in nice, even rows. The capsules looked like a cryogenic pod out of a sci-fi movie. Yet another connection. I would joke about my life being a television show, but it was about to be. Alistair half-guided, half-pushed me to a capsule in the center of the pack. Most of the contestants had already lain in their capsules, while a few were chatting with the people around them. Alistair and I reached my capsule, which had my name, Solomon Arendt. Alistair and I reached the capsule which had the name Solomon Arendt, my name, displayed over the head. All right, good luck, Solomon. Do me proud. Alistair gave his goodbye while pushing me into the capsule. Wait! I broke free from his grip and stepped off to the side. I took the pair of scissors and began cutting my hair. It was a rough job, but it was short, and it wasn't done with a rusty knife in a library. It was a new haircut to represent a new beginning. My life as Solomon Arendt begins now. I returned the scissors to Alistair and climbed into the capsule. Although cramped for most of the contestants, the pod was quite spacious for my stature. As I settled in, a voice announced over a set of speakers that everyone should climb into their capsule, because they would be closing in 30 seconds. Alistair stepped back, and 30 seconds passed. There was a hissing, and the glass capsule began to close. As the lid shut without a noise, there was a click of a lock. Alistair's eyes met mine. Alistair gave me a farewell salute. His eyes for the first time contained a look of sadness, pity, and pain. Alistair turned and began walking away. A fog surrounded me in the capsule and blocked my vision. I began to grow sleepy and fade into unconsciousness. The last words I heard from Alistair were muffled and quiet as he walked away. The situation and personality determine your starting position as a character. With how you are, the position will be equivalent to torture. Be strong, Solomon. Prove to me I made the correct decision.